Hi, my name is Julie Tai. I'm president of the New York League of Conservation Voters Education Fund. We're so happy you could be here today. And it's very fitting that we are very close to the ocean because your district, as you know, is very proximate to the ocean, which is both an economic driver for the community as well as a reason why many people want to live here. However, with climate change happening, being close to the ocean also makes the community more at risk for the impacts of climate change, in particular from rising sea levels and more frequent and severe hurricanes. There are many federal plans to address greenhouse gas emissions. What would you support from a federal plan for addressing greenhouse gas emissions, and what would you do to help reduce those greenhouse gas emissions?
Thank you for having me. You know, when I sit here and I look at this park and I think about those rising waters, what comes to mind is when I came home from my last deployment to Afghanistan in 2012. Just 2 weeks later, Superstorm Sandy hit, and this community was devastated. Right now, there are families who are still overcoming those tragedies. And so for folks in this district, we know that climate change is real. And we know that individuals have to play a part in addressing climate change, but the federal government has a part to play too. Okay, first things first, we have to re-enter into the Paris Climate Agreement because as a nation, we have a responsibility to address climate change and to join with our global partners to make sure that we do.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon, for being here. My name is Harrison Bench. I'm the Deputy Director of Students for Climate Action. New York State has ambitious plans to power 6 million homes with 9,000 megawatts of offshore wind energy by the year 2035. The federal government plays a key role in ensuring that offshore wind is expanded to be available to more Americans. The Federal Bureau of Land Management was supposed to release a map depicting new wind area by the year 2019, but that map has still not been released. As a congressional member, how will you help advance the development of offshore wind energy in the United States of America?
Harrison, it's my pleasure that you're here. I spent 32 years with young people, and I just love young people. So thank you so much for that question. As a member of Congress, my priority will be to I will prioritize renewable energy sources. And I think in doing that, what we have to do is support companies that are innovative and that create these renewable sources. And we have to help them get their products all the way to market. In doing that, we also have to make sure that we secure the funding for them in case they need help with funding. And we also have to make sure that we help them with any environmental impact studies that they need. And we also hold them to the time frames as that you've mentioned, and so that we're continually moving forward and getting to our goal with climate change and the issues that it's causing.
The Solar Investment Tax Credit, or the ITC, is one of the most important federal policies to support the growth of solar. Since it was established in 2006, the solar industry has grown by more than 10,000%. It's creating hundreds of thousands of jobs and resulted in billions of dollars of investment in the United States alone. We are concerned that there's been a very successful program, but that right now it looks as though the tax credit will expire in 2021. Would you, as a member of Congress, support extension of the ITC for solar and other renewable energy? And what else would you do to help support the growth of solar, both in Long Island and in the United States writ large?
As a member of Congress, I will hands down support the extension of the tax credit. I believe that that tax incentive was a primary force in growing the solar industry. We've seen it here on Long Island. I think it's good for jobs, it's good for the economy. Here on Long Island, we have many colleges and universities. I worked at a vocational high school for 32 years. So I know how the trade industries work and how it can bolster our economy. And so what I envision is high schools, community colleges, universities, tech schools partnering with solar industry to continue to grow this. That tax incentive will help to fund that growth and to push that growth. And so I would be, that would be one of my priorities in Congress.
New York State has one of the most aggressive plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the country, but we need federal leadership to ensure that these reductions are met on a national level. Hydrofracking, expanding offshore drilling in the Arctic, and reversing regulations on coal moves the nation in the wrong direction. As a representative in Congress, what would you do to fight back against fossil fuels?
Best way to fight against fossil fuels is to make renewable energy competitive. And so in order to do that, what we have to do is support innovative and smart renewable energy sources. So those companies that are creating this, we have to support them. We have to give them the infrastructure to help their companies. We have to help them with the environmental impact study. As a councilwoman on the town board, I know how private companies and local governments depend on those federal impact studies. So we have to make sure they get to them in a timely manner. So all of these things that the federal government can do to help these companies, that's what we need to do. It will always be my priority. I have pledged not to take a dime from big corporations for my campaign. So the folks in the 2nd Congressional District will always be my priority. Ensuring that the waters do not come across this land anymore will always be my priority, not fossil fuel companies.
As climate change worsens, Long Island faces a threat of intrusion into our drinking water from salt, as well as threats from groundwater toxins such as plumes that we've seen of historic manufacturing processes. Clean drinking water is one of the most important public health matters facing us here in Long Island and elsewhere, including replacing lead service lines, protecting the aquifer from groundwater contamination, and the saltwater intrusion that we mentioned. As a member of Congress, what would you do to protect clean drinking water and to remove threats from Long Island's sole source aquifer?
So I am very concerned about our drinking water on Long Island, and so are voters as I speak to them. And so that's a huge priority for me. The Bethpage plume is of critical concern, and I am just astounded as to the place it's in now. So as a member of Congress, that's one of my biggest priority because it is the source of drinking water for this region, right? And so I think what we need to do is get local, state, and federal environmental agencies together to figure out what went wrong. That should never happen again. That's number one. Number two, we need to find out who was harmed, who has been harmed by this, and we need to make them whole, right? Then what I would propose is to have a bill in Congress so that we can get that plume cleaned up. And I know we've been trying to do this, but my bill will institute critical legislation to make critical penalties for foot dragging. That plume grows a foot a day, so perhaps penalties should match how much that plume is growing, because lives are being damaged every single day, and I'd be willing to do that. It's shameful. And also, legislation that has a chain of custody. So although companies may split and you no longer, let's say, are tied to a company, but you never lose the tie to your responsibility. if you are part of a pollution problem.
Before we end here today, we'd like to offer you the opportunity to provide any more statement that you'd like to make to your potential constituents.
Well, we are renters here. We are renters here, and we have a responsibility to leave the earth better than we found it. And in few generations past, we haven't done that. But as you know, my ancestors have said, when you know better, you do better. And so now we realize the harm that we've caused to this earth. And so now we need to do better so that when we leave it for our children and their grandchildren, it's in a much better place than it is now. And as leaders, we're responsible to make that happen.